How's it going, guys? Davey here with a new review for the latest episode of The Walking Dead entitled Go Getters. And when you think of that term, especially in the context that it was used in this episode, you think that it would be referred to the people of Alexandria, or the Saviors, or Rick and his crew. But I like to believe that the title for this episode, Go Getters, was actually centered around the women of The Walking Dead, particularly Sasha and Maggie, who we catch up with at the hilltop in this episode. I have to be honest, I felt like this was a very woman-empowered episode, and I love that about it because it felt natural. It felt like a very wise choice to kind of take it in that direction, especially when you're going to make this episode a centerpiece around Maggie to try to see where she has been since the season 7 premiere. And not only did we get our break, our much-needed break from Negan and that whole calamity, to kind of focus on something else, especially on something that we haven't seen in a good while, and that's Maggie and this community of Hilltop, along with the people that inhabit it, such as Gregory and Jesus, but also showing that these women can be badass in their own right without doing some hypocritical shit that I've seen some other properties do, where they're like, yeah, women power, but men suck, they're like douchebags and idiots and not... Ghostbusters. This episode did feminism right, in my opinion, alright? Everybody's opinion is going to be differently, but I love that this episode was able to focus on the women being just as badass as the men. And don't get me wrong, we did have some unsavory men in this episode. Gregory in particular. I feel like The Walking Dead is taking some notes off of Game of Thrones, and they're like, hey, to kind of keep people watching, not only do you need to see what's going to happen and who can live and who can die, but also who you want to see die. And you want to create that character that you just want to keep watching episode to episode just to see if these people are going to get it. And if Negan wasn't bad enough, you got the coward known as Gregory. Because trust me, after this episode, people are going to be wanting his death for a good while. But then you got Jesus, who is capable in his own right. You see him doing a couple of badass stuff here in this episode as well, but you can see how they kind of contrast this with the things that the women in this episode can do, like Sasha and Maggie, how they hold their ground by saying that, hey, we're gonna stay, we're not gonna be pushed, but also showing the badass stuff that they could do, especially during the set piece of this episode where you got that car blaring the music, attracting the walkers with the fire, and seeing Sasha and Jesus taking down the walkers while Maggie uses a fucking tractor to dispatch that car, which not only was a badass thing because it looked like she was mowing down those walkers along with the car, kind of like a monster truck, but also Maggie on a tractor kind of brought us back to the good old days of season 2 of life on the farm during the zombie apocalypse. I know an awful lot of people don't like that season, but it reminded me of a simpler time of The Walking Dead. And I cannot forget how much I love that this episode kind of reminded us that, yeah, Abraham's death should not be neglected. I mean, up until this point, it was all about Glenn. Like, oh my god, they killed off Glenn. Everybody was just so stricken by Glenn's death that it kind of overshadowed Abraham getting killed off within minutes of that scene. And I love that this episode really did address that hey, Abraham's death is also going to have some repercussions, and it's also going to affect some people that cared about him, Sasha in particular, who was having a little bit of a thing with Abraham there towards the end. And I love that they actually addressed that, like, hey, Abraham was still a very memorable character for an awful lot of people, and we're not going to be that dick show that's just gonna overlook him and just pay all of the attention over to Glenn just because he was a regular. And if there was one good thing to come out of Gregory's cowardice, especially during his little meetup with the Saviors, is that it brought back Stephen Ogg's character Simon, who I really love, because not only do I like this character actor an awful lot, he was Trevor in GTA 5, he had a brief cameo, like one brief appearance in Better Call Saul, but now we see him taking a much more prominent role here in The Walking Dead. And I love his little line where he says, I'm your Negan for now, because we still felt Negan's presence without him being actually present and kind of hamming it up a little bit too much. Because again, like I said after last week's episode, I was hoping for a little bit of a break from Negan, and we kind of got it, but at the same time we didn't get it, but we got a much more subdued version of that with the presence of Simon in this episode. And I just love the scenes of him in it. He was doing a very excellent job. But as great as this episode could have been, it's not The Walking Dead without some shit that we just don't care about. Carl and Enid, I'm sorry. I know that this episode is trying to push us to like these two and to kind of like ship them together, especially after their kiss. They finally got their smoochy going on in this episode. After roller skating, a little roller skate date in the zombie apocalypse. Why the fuck not? None of these characters, even Carl as a regular, have been doing anything to make me care about them, or at least care about their relationship with one another. And I know that maybe this episode was kind of hinting at the possibility of one of them biting the dust at the end of the season, especially because they're trying to make you care about him. And whenever The Walking Dead is trying to make you care about a certain character, that means that they're gonna pull the rug from underneath their feet and kill off that character, just like other shows do. And I'm trying to feel that for Carl and Enid. But they're just so, like, mundane and just like, yeah, you know, whatever. Very teen angst. I don't care. I don't. I wish I could, but I just don't. I was just checking my phone every time their scenes popped up in this episode. As for Carl, the only major interesting thing that happened with him is that thing at the end where he hops on to Negan's truck, one of Negan's trucks, meeting up with Jesus, which was a nice little interaction there with the two of them. I love that Jesus does his little ninja thing, crawls in, and then Carl's just like, hey, kind of beat you to it. So I'm looking forward to see what kind of predicament those two end up in the next episode, or probably the episode after that, because The Walking Dead, they do that shit. So another episode of The Walking Dead filled with an awful lot of cool stuff, along with some stuff that I just don't care about, that could have easily been cut out, paced with some other better stuff that could have made for some interesting things. But at least I love the women-centric aspect of the episode, and Maggie saying my name is Maggie, Maggie Rhee. I'm not gonna lie, it got a little bit of an awe from me. Like, oh, she said Rhee. Glenn Rhee. The baby. Okay. I will be giving Go Getters a high 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it a little bit more than last week's episode, but still, I'm getting scared for this season. Started off great, but we're starting to fall into those typical Walking Dead trappings, and I'm getting nervous. Anyways, that about does it for me. Let me know what you guys thought of this week's episode of The Walking Dead. Please let me know in the comments what you guys think of how Hilltop's role is going to play with this war against the Saviors. Do you think Gregory's going to rat out? Do you want him to die? And where's Jesus and Carl going to end up with tailing at the back of that truck? Because I'm nervous for Jesus. I'm sorry. I feel like the show's in trouble when I'm much more nervous for a character that we've only seen like 2 or 3 times rather than a series regular. Ugh. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and share this video, subscribe for future endeavors, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.